Turned up. Is that better for you now?
Yes, thank you. That's good.
Right, apologies for that. So what I was talking about was the type of plants you can buy that are good for indoors. And the ones we've got here in this set are narcissus, which are like daffodils, but much smaller, and therefore better for the pots that we're going to grow indoors. Daffodils that we have outdoors tend to be rather large, and they don't do so well indoors. So this is a nice set. As I said, always make sure you're buying indoor bulbs, and all garden centres will specify that they are bulbs produced for indoors. So this is quite a nice collection. But we can also buy hyacinths, which are a very classical indoor plant with a very nice strong scent. And you can see here in the picture I've got, there are different colours. You can go blue, pink, white, cream, also yellow. They're great fun to do. Other bulbs that we can get also are the large bulb we have here, which is, sorry, the name's complete, Amaryllis. The name completely went from me. Lovely, big bulbs you can see, and I'll talk about those in a minute. So let's start off talking about the hyacinth. How do we grow it so that it's going to be successful indoors? Well, what we have to do with some bulbs is to actually grow them and give them a period in darkness. So I'm going to show you how we do that. Let's just move that for a minute. So here are our hyacinths. Now, we've got two ways of growing hyacinths and other bulbs too. We can grow them in water. So can you see these jars that I've got here where the hyacinth bulb has been put on top and is going to grow its roots through into the water here. Now you can buy special beautifully designed pots, can you see, with a narrow neck, so that holds the bulb above the water. But we can also just use jam jars that we've cleaned. So here's a jam jar that I cleaned, took the labels off. It's a nicely designed one. All you've got to do is make sure that the neck of the jar is small enough to hold the hyacinth so it doesn't fall through the bulb. So what we're doing here is we're placing the bulb with its point upwards, and you can see the roots below. Now, I've had these ones in these jars for about 2 weeks. Now, you might think there's not very much growth there, but they have to take a few weeks to grow their roots right into the water. So what I'm going to do with these, I've put them in the water. The water comes up only to about ½ an inch, couple of centimeters below where the roots are. So the bulb is not actually sitting in the water, it's sort of sitting above, just above. And what that will do is make the roots get drawn down into the water. So what I need to do is give these bulbs a period of dark and cold. So instead of keeping them in my nice warm kitchen, I'm going to be putting them outdoors in a shed, a garage, or maybe you've got a conservatory. And I can think of a way of darkening it, because they do need to be in the dark, not in the light. So what you do if you've got somewhere which is light and cold is make it dark. And you can do that by putting a box over the top. That's one way of doing it. That way you're keeping out the light. Or if you've got a black plastic bag, you could put that over it loosely so that they're completely cut out from the light. Now they're going to be like this in the dark, cold place, probably, if possible, below 10 degrees centigrade, certainly not freezing anyway. You're going to keep them there for about 6 weeks, but what you will do is just check from time to time, just to make sure that everything's okay, that the water level is at the right height. If the water level is too low, you'll have to top it up. And you're going to look out for a nice green shoot coming up from this pointed end. And the shoot needs to be about 2 to 4 inches high. before you will be able to bring the bulbs out and encourage these lovely flowers to grow. Once you can see the shoot, these roots have grown down and the shoot has grown out, you can bring it into a cool place indoors. Don't bring it into a centrally heated room because it's too hot. Bring it into the coolest room you've got, maybe a room you can afford to turn the heating off, or you've got a porch maybe that's cool. Or I've been using my utility room where I've turned off the heating. And then they will gradually grow the stem and the flowers. And again, it might take another 6 weeks. So all in all, to grow hyacinths could take between 10 and 12 weeks altogether. Quite a long time, but it's worth doing for the beauty of having these lovely hyacinths and the scent. If the scent's too strong for you, which it can be for some people, then put them somewhere like in a hall where you've got the scent gently floating around the building, but it's not actually overwhelming you in a centrally heated room. And I did mention about wearing gloves. I'm wearing gloves here because hyacinths especially can irritate the skin. So make sure you've got either these thin gloves or your gardening gloves before you touch them. So that's a way of growing them in water. The fun of growing them with water is, of course, you can see how far the roots are going. You can watch them growing, and you could have a competition whose hyacinth will grow the quickest. But another way of growing them is actually in a container. So here I've got a bowl, which is a normal household bowl. And the reason we use bowls with no holes in the bottom is because we're going to keep them indoors on the table. You don't really want the bowl dripping. So what do I use to grow my hyacinths? Same hyacinths, just another way of growing them. How am I going to grow them? Well, what we suggest is something called bulb fibre. Bulb fibre is a special coarse mix of compost. So it's not the same as multi-purpose. And what it has in it is something charcoal-like, which keeps the compost what's called sweet, or it stops it smelling because it's not able to drain. So what we do is put a couple of inches in the bottom of our container, place our hyacinths with the tops, pointed tops upright, and then put more of our bulb fibre around them so that the tops are still sticking up. And a bit more. But you can see as I put it on, you can see in my hand, it's quite coarse compared with multi-purpose, and that's very good because it allows air into the soil and it allows the bulbs to grow in a sort of fresh conditions. Bulbs have all the food in the bulb, which allows the stem and the flower to grow. You don't need to feed them with liquid feed or anything like that. So all I would do is press that. I'm leaving the tops, you can see, about a third free of any compost. I'm going to tap it down and then just give it a little bit of water because it's not draining, because it's got no holes in the bottom. So what I do, instead of having a giant great pot as we do for our other plants, I'm just going to use a very little container and very gradually, very delicately water. So you don't need to fill it up, you just need to leave a little bit, and then I'm going to leave it. Now, if I haven't got a little jug like that, but I'm sure we've all got something, you could use a little jar, or you could use your bottle with holes in the top, which we've used before. and that just sprinkles, lightly sprinkles again. So a very little amount of water, press it down, and it goes through the same thing. We're going to put it somewhere cold and dark. And again, we don't have anywhere to put it that's dark. We're going to put our box over the top and keep it there again for the same amount of time, checking from time to time that the compost or the bulb fibre that we've used is slightly moist. So I'd obviously have to use a bare finger to press. We don't want it to be very wet because the bulbs will rot. So just gently moist. And then again, after 6 or so weeks, we'll check when the stems come up, a couple of inches, 5 centimetres, then we'll bring it out and put it in cool conditions. What you can also do, which is quite nice, if you want to cover the bulb fibre, you could put coloured pebbles, you could put moss. If you've got some in the garden, that's the best way. Just rake it up and put moss on it. So we can decorate the top of our pot to look more attractive. So that's one way of doing it. What else can we grow? We can grow narcissus. Now, let me find my bag. Here we are. In my lovely mixed bag of bulbs, one of them is called Paperwhites. I hope you can see that there, the middle one. It's very, very white. And the good thing about that Paperwhite bulb is that it doesn't need the period of cold that we've said that the hyacinths and other flowering bulbs need, because it's not hardy. In other words, we would never plant it outside. So this is a lovely one to grow because it's much quicker than the hyacinths. And you can just put it inside, no period of cold. So how do you grow those? Well, one way is, again, doing it in our little pot. And here I've got just a little pot from home that I would normally put something else in. But I've put, hasn't got any holes at the bottom. I've put in just 3, 4 little ones in there. And again, the same thing as I did before, bulb fibre, which keeps it fresh, and a nice growing medium. Another way of doing it is to grow it with pebbles in water. So it's slightly different from the way that we did it with the hyacinths. What I'm doing here is filling up a jar with pebbles. Now you can use any sorts of pebbles, very decorative pebbles, or these are ones that I bought a big bag of in a garden centre. It was only £5 for the bag, and I can use those pebbles elsewhere. It was a big bag, so I can use them to mulch all sorts of things to put on top of outdoor pots if need be. So I like them. The thing to do if you buy pebbles or you take them from the garden, maybe you've got some there, is to give them a rinse. We don't want dirty pebbles in our water. So rinse the pebbles, fill it up about, as I have, about nearly halfway up, and place your bulbs. Now these bulbs have actually been growing in here, sorry, it fell over, for a week.
Wow.
And look, can you see the roots on them?
Yeah, masses.
So there, and some of the top. So these Paperwhite narcissus will probably take 6 weeks maximum to actually flower. So if you're wanting to do something for Christmas, it's something you could do in November, ready. So we're going to put the bulbs on top of the pebbles. And what you need to do is perhaps just put a few pebbles around the bulbs just to keep them upright, because they will fall over otherwise. So a few, again, nice clean bulbs around. And we'll just pop some water in so that in this case, it comes up just barely to the bottom again of your bulb. So there we are, it's just touching those white roots that you can see there. I'm going to put this on a windowsill or somewhere in a bright, cold room. So it doesn't have to be in the dark, doesn't have to be very cold, just an unheated room is probably best at first to get it going. What you don't want is to put it in bright sunlight. So don't pick a windowsill that's facing south or west where you get a lot of sun coming in. That can be too much. So that will produce flowers, as I say, in 6 weeks. And you don't need to feed it. You don't need to do anything. You just make sure that the water is always checked so that it's just about where the roots are.
Okay.
So that's a great way of growing them. And actually, Trellis has produced a nice fact sheet called bulbs.
What's it called? Jingle bulbs.
Jingle bulbs. Jingle bulbs, as in jingle bells.
That's the one.
Yeah, and that's a great one. You can see this one I've got is in a lovely glass jar. But if you wanted to do them for your group to take home or to give as a present, the Jingle Bulbs fact sheet tells you how to grow almost exactly in the same way, but in a plastic glass, a beer glass, pint glass, and how to decorate it. So that's a great fun thing for the group to do. And you know that you will be getting flowering stems, or certainly buds on the flowering stems within time for Christmas. So that's a great present to do. So that's a really good one to do, and quite an easy way of doing it. We've all got glass. You can do it in glass, anything, big glasses that you put your drinks in, or decorative ones. And as I say, because you don't need to go through the process of putting it in the dark and the cold, it's much quicker and much easier for people to manage. So that's Paperwhite narcissus. And as I said, or you grow them in a bowl. And what I'm going to do, because I can't see what roots are growing in this one, so I'm going to see, because they were both done in the same time, how quickly either of them grow in the stem and grow into flower. So that's quite a fun thing to do, to work out how they grow. But it's always interesting when you've got roots below that you can't see, what you have to do about that. I mean, some people suggest trying to pull on them, but I don't think I want to disturb them. I think we'll just wait and watch. So that's a great way of doing Paperwhite. The other narcissus that are in this group have to go through a period of cold and dark, like the hyacinths. So the only ones that don't are these Paperwhites, because they are a slightly different sort of narcissus and are happy in slightly warmer conditions. But all the other ones will take a little longer and have to go through the whole same thing. Now, you might say, I don't want to buy bulb fibre, it's another expense. I've got lots of multi-purpose compost. Can't I use that? You can use multi-purpose compost. And the best way of using it is to put it into a bowl of whatever size that has holes in the bottom, because multi-purpose compost has nutrients and minerals and things in it that hold on to water, but also feed what you're putting in. And so the mix is perhaps almost too strong for the bulbs, which don't really need all that. So if we put it into a container that has holes in, then any watering will take through all those minerals that aren't really needed and just wash it through. So what you should do if you've got a bowl, however big, even if it's much smaller than this, with holes in, is you want to stop the compost running out as you water. So using crocks, which are old broken bits of pot, which I'm sure we've all got, just cover up the holes, a few of those, and that will stop any compost running out. Then you do it in exactly the same way as I've done the hyacinths. You treat the multi-purpose compost in the same way, and you treat the bulbs in the same way. You can, if you're worried about the compost being too heavy that you've got, is mix it with a bit of vermiculite or a bit of gravel, just to put more drainage in, so it allows the water to run through, so that the bulbs are never sitting in very wet compost, which is the problem. So it's perfectly possible to put it to grow multi-purpose compost. Don't think you have to buy bulb fibre. Bulb fibre is just like the best thing to do, but you can do it in other ways. So the other thing is if you're growing in a pot that has holes indoors, find some sort of nice saucer that you can put underneath so the water doesn't run onto your furniture. And you keep that nice and tidy. So what else are we going to grow? Another thing we can grow here is Amaryllis, which is a beautiful flowering bulb. This is a red version, which you see a lot of, obviously, for Christmas, but you can get it in many colours, from beautiful whites and pinks and so on. So the Amaryllis is this giant bulb, which I've shown you before. And this is one where you use one single bulb in your container. So it's so big that you don't grow many together. So what I just choose is to get a pot which is not so much bigger than the bulb itself. Now I've got a giant bulb here, but even if I put it in this bulb, it's not much bigger than the actual, you can see there's only about an inch each side of it. It's a little bit taller, and I want this bulb to sit up. So what I'm going to do is use more of my stones that I bought in my bag before, pop them in the bottom, see if that'll lift up the height of the bulb a bit more. Yes, it's bringing it up, isn't it? So a few more. There we go. And that'll mean that my bulb is sitting up proud above the top of the pot. I can grow this in multi-purpose compost, or I can grow this in bulb fibre. It's the same thing as it was with the other things. So I'm going to put in, fill it up to about half the height of the pot, break up all the holes. What you could do is make sure that you've got this bulb ready in an open dish. It must be kept room temperature because it'll shock the bulbs if it's kept outside and cold. So I'm going to fill it to about halfway up. Sorry. Pop my bulb in. You don't have to worry too much about the roots. They'll find their way down. There we go. It's sitting up nicely. And then just put enough round the edge. Because, as I said before, all the energy for the growth of the stem and the flowers is already in the bulb. The soil is really just anchoring it into the pot. It's not actually feeding it. So you don't need to feed bulbs at all, unless you want to grow them for another year. So there we go. Shake it a little bit, push it down. There we go. So quite a lot of the bulb, as you can see, is actually exposed, but that's fine. That's what we want. This means it, again, won't rot. So I'm going to give it a little bit of water. I can feel that my bulb fibre is actually quite damp anyway. If it was very dry, I'd probably want to have a little bit more, but I'm going to just put a little bit of water in, not much, again with my small watering jar. There we go. That'll do. That'll settle the bulb fibre in. So what do I do with it now? Although Amaryllis wants to have warm temperatures, it does need a little bit of darkness. So for about 2 weeks, I want to put it somewhere warm and dark. If you have an airing cupboard, fantastic. That's the place to put it. Don't need to cover it up, just put it in. Most of us don't have airing cupboards these days, unfortunately. So what else could you do? Well, you could just find a dark cupboard in a normally heated room. So the room will stay warm, not a cold room, a warm room. Just put it in somewhere dark. And again, you can always cover it up. So it's really just telling it it's time to grow, to come on. And what you'll see in the middle of the top, and you can see the top is where the leaves, the old leaves have been cut off. the new leaves will begin to emerge. And what you'll see first is just a shoot coming up in the middle of this. And once you see that shoot coming up, that's going to tell you it's ready to come out into the light. And that should be about 2 weeks in a dark, warm place. Then you can just put it somewhere, again, nice and warm, light, sunny, not direct sunlight, because again, it's too much for it, or it'll make the whole stem lean towards the light, and you want it to grow nice and straight to get there. You need to keep the compost lightly moist, and from beginning planting to it actually flowering, or at least having flower buds, should take around 6 weeks. So a bit like the Paperwhites, these are things you could do in time for Christmas if you're starting in November and you haven't got time for the 12 weeks the hyacinths and other ones take. So once you've got the shoot, keep the compost slightly moist and just watch it grow. What will happen is you'll get some leaves and then you'll get a stem, and the stem will produce beautiful buds, which will turn into this lovely centerpiece of a lily flowered plant, not scented in this case. So if you're in a house where you don't want to have scent, this is a good one to do. And what you can do with these ones, and you can do with the Paperwhites as well, is plant some, then 2 weeks later, plant some more. And maybe 2 weeks later, you could plant some more. It just means that you're going to get plants flowering gradually through the winter, which is a long time before the beautiful bulbs start flowering outside, when you can cut those and bring those in. But the only other thing to tell you about this Amaryllis is sometimes the stem and the flowers will get a little heavy and it'll want lean over. So get yourself one of these green gardens canes. They're the thin garden canes, and you can just put it in beside it and then tie in your stem to that, and that'll just support it while it's in its pot. So what other plants can you grow? Well, you can also grow irises, little tiny irises, and crocuses as well. And again, you'll do them in the same method we did for the hyacinths, where they do need a period of cold. So the best thing, if you haven't done it this year, is grow the things that don't take very long, and then put in your diary for next year. In September, I'm going to think about planting those hyacinths or planting those narcissus that require longer and a cold period. And then you can get all that done September or October and not have to worry about it. But it's great fun, and it just brings joy to the heart, doesn't it? To have some lovely flowers, lovely scent in your house when there's so little going on outside. So any questions, please ask, and I hope you'll be able to start growing these beautiful bulbs.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Certainly does gladden the heart, the thought of all those flowers.
I know.
A lovely thought. So just give you a moment to get you back to your seat there. I wonder if people have questions for us. Nobody's put anything into the chat, but I'm sure they'll be thinking of things that they'd like to ask you. So we'll just give them a moment, and what I'll do is I'll just remove the spotlight from this so we can all see each other. Now, if you would like to ask a question, please use the raise your hand in the Zoom, and I'll be able to see who would like to ask the question, and I'll be able to ask you to unmute and ask away. Oh, I think it's a lovely idea to think that we can have a diary full of bulbs.
I think that's the way to do it, because the time goes so quickly and you suddenly realise you've missed that window of opportunity for some of the bulbs that take longer.
Take longer, yeah, absolutely. So, what would be a sort of an early one to have in your diary, Caroline? What would be sort of a
Well,
good
I think if you like hyacinths, I think the hyacinths do
right,
take about 12 weeks.
right?
And
So,
some of the other narcissus, not the paperwhites, paperwhites are short, that's fine. But some of the other narcissus and the other sort of more outdoor ones like crocuses and irises do need that long period of cold and dark before you can bring them in and then let them bloom. So
yeah,
I would suggest putting, and of course, I've put mostly groups of things apart from the hydrangeas, but you could certainly put any of the paperwhites in a little small container if you wanted to give it as a present and
yeah,
wrap it with a ribbon and things like that. You don't have to do big things
big,
like this because I have to say, usually indoor bulbs are a bit more expensive than the outdoor bulbs we buy because of the way they're treated.
yes,
So,
yeah.
it's not that cheap. I think the hyacinths, it was something like 6 for £5, just to give you an idea.
Okay, okay,
And
that's
the
good.
Amaryllis, I'm afraid, is a big bulb with a big price.
Yes.
But, you have to kind of think, well, it's a special treat.
Well, it
And
is.
beautiful.
They are. They
The
are.
only bulbs that you can't use again next year
Uh-huh.
by putting them in the garden are the paperwhite bulbs
Okay. Okay.
because the paperwhites are not hardy.
Right.
Hence, we can grow them indoors.
Yes. Yes.
Everything else, so the hyacinths or the other narcissus, can be, once the spring has come,
Okay.
you can put them out and plant them in the ground, and they will begin to revert to normal growing conditions, like an outdoor bulb.
Yes. You planted it outside. Right. Oh, well, that's good. So you can
So
give it.
hopefully you can get more for your money because you're
Yeah.
not wasting them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
amaryllis, it is possible to keep the amaryllis going in
Uh-huh.
the summer. You put it outside, let it. So I'd be putting it in something with a hole, not a pot
Uh-huh.
that I've got in now.
Yeah.
And it will have grown very long leaves.
Uh-huh.
And you let it take the goodness from the sun and photosynthesize
Yeah.
so that the goodness is being put back in the bulb.
Okay.
And then this is, I mean, it works for some, not for everybody. Not
Yeah.
me, I have to admit, it didn't work for me. But you cut off the leaves in September,
Okay.
bring it in, and then you're treating it again like you had for a new one.
Mhm.
So you might be people who are really good at this
Keep it going.
and keep it going.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
there's a
there's a possibility. There's a possibility you can.
well, excellent.
Um, Another thing I didn't mention about when we buy bulbs of any sort is just give them a little squeeze. If they're squishy, they won't grow,
What? Right. Okay.
won't work. So they do need to be, solid, nice, solid bulbs.
Okay, so it's like when you're choosing onions at the supermarket.
Absolutely.
Give them a little
Give them a
squeeze.
little squeeze.
Okay.
And don't worry too much if you find that they've got a little bit of growth already. There's some in a pack here which
Okay.
I can see there's a bit of growth on there. That's fine. It's only a little bit. Won't worry.
Okay. Right. That's good to know
But
because
if
sometimes you see them like that, don't you?
you do, and if you find you bought some and you can't use them straight away, then
Uh,
again, store them somewhere like a shed, somewhere cool, protected but cool for a few weeks, however long it takes you to actually
okay.
manage to plant them up.
Great. Okay. Now I see the ladies of Chelston Gardens have been busy putting something up. Maybe they would like to switch on their. Maybe they'd like to unmute and
Yes.
show us what you've been doing, ladies. Come on. That would be lovely if they'd like to share with us. I saw
Okay,
somebody with a pot in front of them.
mm.
Maybe she's gone to get it. I think somebody had taken it away. We'll come back. We'll come back to them. Has anyone?
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to ask if anyone else had had experience or tried out doing this kind of activity with their groups at all. Maybe you'd like to share how you got on, what you did. Tell us what you did. Oh, here we go. Chelston. That's a huge pot. Fantastic. Oh, look, Caroline, they've got loads of bulbs in there.
I can't see them.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I'll just spotlight them I'm
Yes,
spotlighting
just
details
do.
just so we can see the lovely big pot of
Wonderful. And what are they? Are they hyacinths in your bowl? They look like hyacinths to me. That would be a wonderful display.
it would. It's going to look fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, and there's an amaryllis next to them. Can you see the shoot?
Oh yes, this tall shoot. Oh, lovely.
I think.
That's the ladies.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely. Oh, well, they're ahead of themselves. That's fantastic.
that's going to be good. Well, enjoy that. It's going to be very perfumed.
Yeah. Oh, look at the roots on it. Oh, is
Yeah.
that hyacinth?
Yeah.
Oh,
It is.
you're aware, you're ready
Yeah.
to go. Fantastic.
That's